Hey everyone, and welcome back to another industry report. Well, badass Randy Pitchford is back at it again. Despite the multi-million-dollar success of Borderlands 3 and millions of sold copies and repeated assurances from upper management, turns out Gearbox staff are not going to be receiving the hefty royalty bonuses as they were promised. And if they don't like it, well, the good news is Randy says they can quit. So, that's today's video. Like, sub, and check out the daily briefing, the fastest way to stay up to date on what matters in the games industry. It's delivered to your inbox every day on Patreon. And a big thank you to our patrons. Ad rates have dropped off a cliff. Much of our content is now made at a loss, which sucks, but the patrons allow it to keep going. So, you're vital. Thank you, and let's go. Borderlands 3 released last year to huge success, so much so that 2K described it as having established a billion-dollar global brand. That's why Gearbox employees were a little bit shocked when their CEO told them that actually they would not be receiving the royalty bonuses that they expected from the project. Now, this information comes courtesy of Jason Schreier, who spoke to 6 anonymous individuals close to Gearbox. Staff will actually still receive bonuses, but it's nothing close to the tens or even hundreds of thousands that some staff were anticipating based off the expectations that Gearbox had set. So, what's the deal with these bonuses? Like, I think a lot of us, we think about a bonus and then we think about, sort of like big corporate types getting massive payouts on top of an already huge compensation package. Well, while that has actually happened with Randy himself a few times, broadly speaking, it's not really what the deal is at Gearbox because they run in a bit of a strange way. See, Gearbox offers a lower than average salary for the games industry, but they make up for that with their profit sharing scheme. Basically, royalties of all releases are split 60-40, 60 back to the company, and 40 goes to employees in the form of their quarterly bonuses. Now, this system has been around as long as Gearbox itself, and allegedly it has earned their talent more than $100 million in royalty bonuses over that time, which is pretty good stuff. When Borderlands 2 released, actually, many employees made enough money that they could just buy a house or do something like that. And that's something that Gearbox actually promote as a perk of their company when they try to hire new staff. Given the success of some of Gearbox's titles, this whole thing does make sense. I mean, there's times where the company would be getting an absurd amount of money relative to its overall expenses and amount of staff. So why bother getting taxed in that year with all of that money when you can just roll a structure like this that reduces your fixed costs and then when the revenue is good, efficiently pass that on to your employees? I imagine that's some of the thinking there. Plus, for the employees, I think they would usually understand that yes, if things go well for the company, then net, the employees would be ahead as well, just like the company. Now, thanks to flops like Aliens, Colonial Marines, and Battleborn, the studio has been, doing a little bit less well, and those bonus checks had been smaller for a period of time. But this year was supposed to change that, though, thanks to the massive success of Borderlands 3. Several employees from Gearbox told Kotaku that management had promised them, for that game, 6-figure bonuses following its launch, with the payouts being larger for people who had been at the company longer. Now, the vision of such a substantial payday for all their work would have no doubt motivated many of the company's staff. Of course, long hours and lower than average pay. Well, if you're going to get that massive payday, then hey, maybe it's worth it. Now, equity or profit sharing, that is, of course, a very common thing when you're dealing with indies or tech startups. But that's usually because, there's basically no capital. I mean, that's something we've had to do, right? Being a game team startup where, there's a profit share there, and I wish we were able to pay more money, but right now we're simply not able to. So that kind of thing is normal across indies and, startups. But I guess when we look at Gearbox's situation, it seems to me like they're using this to cap their downside, so, like their fixed cost, maybe tax. But it's really bad when they then, make false promises that the upside for staff is uncapped. You see, it should be a win-win situation if it's done right, but by altering the terms of the deal, it's now a bit at the expense of the staff, and that's the bit that feels really scummy. Now, explaining the lower bonuses, Randy said that Borderlands 3 had been more expensive than expected, and that Gearbox had actually grown larger because of, just the company's expansion. Sales projections apparently had also been a little bit off, despite it, being on track to be a franchise record. Now, the idea that the studio's spending is somehow the staff's problem, that's a strange way to take that. I mean, surely the studio expansion costs would have been factored in when communicating bonuses to staff in the past. Shouldn't decisions made by the studio work from being funded by their 60% revenue split of the profits, and then of course the amount of money they get for their publisher during the development of the game? Is that not what makes sense? Is that not how it should be? So because of that, blaming things like expansion and high development costs, I mean, yeah, they do make it seem a little bit like staff are paying out of their 40% share for the broader company's growth. So basically, it seems like to me they're sort of cooking the books a little bit there when it comes to what they're considering royalties, and I mean, yeah, it just comes off a little bit scummy, doesn't it? At any rate, though, how did the cost of setting up an entirely new studio not factor into, thinking when, it was time to pay, the bonuses, okay? Is this ineptitude or is this dishonesty? It does smell like they saw the money coming in and then just kind of changed their minds on things a little bit. Now, Borderlands 3 did cost a fortune to make, right? They swapped from Unreal Engine 3 to 4 midway through development, and that delayed the project, which of course expands how much it would have cost. And then of course there's the terms of Gearbox's deal with 2K that prevented the game from being profitable for the studio for quite a while. Basically, Gearbox would only receive royalties for Borderlands 3 once the game had earned back the budget, about $140 million including DLC, that of course the publisher would have paid for. Now, the strange thing here is that the reasoning seems perfectly sound. The deal, which is pretty standard, dictates that costs must be met before the royalties can be earned, so Gearbox don't actually make a profit for a while there. Although they knew this, right? So why would they then not be transparent with their staff about its implications on their bonus structure? Gearbox's statement to Kotaku in response to all this emphasizes that Borderlands 3 only recently became a profitable video game, so basically that means that next quarter bonuses may be higher once the royalties actually start rolling in. So then, let's actually take a look at profitability here. There is a lot that we don't know, but there is some stuff that we do know. Jason says that the cost was around 140 million, and that means it's got to sell over 2 million copies to break even. But then, of course, we've got the platform cuts, and we've got 2K's cut. Now that said, it sold 5 million at launch, and has been continuing to sell well ever since. Everyone involved profited from this launch, I think that much is certain, just, a bit less so the people who actually made it. Now, that would be okay if those staff were paid at the industry standard rate throughout the development process, but they weren't, and that is what makes it not be okay, because they were paid less, with the entire point being that when the bonuses came, they would be large. This really is quite clear to me. If Gearbox wanted to fund company expansion, then it should have worked that into its plan, rather than attempt to do more than their 60% would allow them, and then punish their staff by reducing those bonuses. It just looks like shady dealings from Gearbox, and especially Randy in particular. Their whole strategy of communicating these reasons just kind of stinks of dishonesty a bit. I mean, why were the staff repeatedly promised high bonuses in the first place if they weren't actually going to happen? Now, Pitchford did not attribute the decision to any ongoing economic uncertainty, right now, and of course, right now is probably the time staff would like those bonuses. He did say that he hoped to secure an advance from 2K on the future royalties though, so I guess that would be good for the staff. Now, that said, anyone who's unhappy with the royalty sharing situation, he just said they're welcome to quit. So I've got to wonder then, if that would have hit the higher bonus earning experienced staff more, and if so, is this Gearbox trying to push out some of their more expensive people in order to get some cheaper staff in? I mean, we've literally seen Blizzard Entertainment do that multiple times before. I've seen that in community management and esports roles, and it does seem like that just staff rinsing is a prevalent thing in the industry. Now, the flip side of that is that this could also cause brain drain, and we need only think of the Naughty Dog situation we covered recently, where their working conditions and crunch expectations were so bad that they've lost many experienced staff and basically have started having to rely on juniors, often juniors hired from outside industries like film and TV animation. Why? Well, because the games animators didn't want to be there. which, if you're thinking about the long-term quality of Naughty Dog as a studio and its institutional talent, there are pretty grave implications there. Now, going back to Gearbox, and especially Randy, I mean, just for the sketchiness of Randy, I mean, I'm pretty sure you remember him apparently taking that $12 million bonus whenever the development of Borderlands 3 began and all of the controversy around that. And with that happening, and now this, I think you can clearly see why Gearbox staff are going to be upset at this. Some actually even expect an exodus from the company soon. Bonuses, right? They're meant to balance out those lower salaries, and if those bonuses are not being paid, then yes, why on earth would you want to work there? Why would you stay, especially if you could get a better job somewhere else? Having such a clear rules for me, not for thee, just makes Randy seem like an unlikable snake, no matter how cool he tries to be, and no matter how badass his badass glasses are. So, Monday's news is apparently devastating for the staff, especially after the repeated assurances to the contrary. There are people who made financial plans based on expectations set by company management, and now they've got some of that future upended. They were taken for a ride and they were messed around. Those people have got little recourse available to them other than to just leave. And as for how Randy thinks about it, well, he basically just said, my way or the highway. If you don't like it, you're welcome to quit. Pitchford seems to get away with that attitude a lot, but you know what? I don't think his luck can last forever. There's something twisted going on behind the scenes at Gearbox. I mean, there's the reports of Randy punching a guy in the hotel lobby at GDC. Something is going to come to the surface here. I mean, I can't say for sure. I obviously don't know anything extra there, but given all of the shady stuff that we hear about the company and about Pitchford especially, I mean, surely that guy is just a ticking time bomb, and surely anyone working with that company would want Pitchford removed as CEO and maybe a bit more of a stable guiding hand to actually be there, because the eccentricities, the quirks, and seemingly the greedy selfishness of Pitchford are just obviously bad for the company and bad for staff, even though those staff, of course, have absolutely proven themselves to be able to create top-selling, well-received games. So, there you go. That is today's story, a dive into Gearbox. Of course, if you want more, hit up the daily briefing. We do it 5 times a day, delivered straight to your mailbox. Our team goes, we look at all the news, all of it. We synthesize it, we boil it down, we give you key points, and we just put it out there so that you can very quickly, efficiently be caught up on the news. So, yeah, you can check that out. A massive thank you to our patrons for making it all possible. And with that, I'll see you next time.